Welcome. This is my YouTube, or you are locked into Soho Radio, and I'm very pleased to have on my guests on Music Discovery this month. It's Jacana people. It's Rob and Aaron. Hey guys.
Hey Georgie,
Hey.
Thank you for having us.
Pleasure. How are you? The loaded question. How are you?
Yeah, we're good. We're good. It's a busy time, and things are opening up, and the sun's coming out, and it feels good. It feels like a really nice time for us. And yeah, how about you? How are you doing?
Yeah, I'm good.
Good.
Like you say, yeah, everything feels a little bit better, doesn't it?
Yes.
Now the sun is shining, and there's the possibility of going inside a pub. I mean, it's incredible.
Yeah, it's a dream. Yeah.
So you guys are based in Buckinghamshire, right? Or are you London based but kind of grew up in Buckinghamshire and that's how you guys met? How did you come together and start making music?
We met at school 10 years ago or thereabouts, and yeah, out in Bucks, which is kind of where we're based now for the moment. And yeah, we grew up playing in indie bands and did that whole thing, and yeah, we've kind of just grown up listening to music together and playing music together and writing and then producing. So it was kind of really natural for us to just fall into this project. We've done a load of different things over the years, but yeah, this feels like the most natural thing we've ever done, really, Jacana people. This is where we're happiest. When you say, Rob, this is like our happy place. Like,
Yeah, this is kind of like, there's been various iterations that haven't been quite right, haven't quite aligned with our taste completely. Whereas kind of this is the first time where it's felt we're making the music that we genuinely want to be making. Which sounds like it would be easy to do, but actually it kind of takes work to figure out what that is.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. It takes time to find your voice and actually figure out what kind of artist you want to be. And when you find that, it's so liberating in a way. So were all those kind of indie bands and a love of electronic music, at what point did you start thinking, okay, we want to go down this route of making quite like ethereal, vibey sort of electronic dance music, but that's on a slightly more left field tip?
Yeah, I mean, we've been listening to acts like Born Canada and Aphex Twin and Fortet and Caribou for years, all through the time that we were making those, that indie music and the guitar music and whatever. And then it kind of came to a head probably towards the end of 2019. We were like, well, actually, why don't we just put our own attention into this? And we really kind of had no expectation of what this project would look like. It was just about, we've done this for so long together, why don't we do it a bit longer? And there was no, we talked about it quite a lot. There's been no expectation about this project. It's just like, this is what we love doing. And it is a bit of a cliche. People say all the time, just make what you love. But it really is, like you say, liberating. It's very freeing to do that. And from there, it was kind of, we locked into that. And now it's kind of our default. We don't, everyone still has to work to write music and make music, but we come back to it every time, now, and it seems to kind of connect with people, which makes it even sweeter, I think, as well.
Yeah. What are the benefits of being a duo, and how does it work? What's the process?
I smile because we're just quite different people, I think, and we work quite differently. So we don't really get on each other's, don't step on each other's toes, really. We're often just, it's always bouncing back and forth, and that's the best thing for me about having duos, just having like because we're working together so long, just having someone on your wavelength who's just there and can kind of pick up where you're, fill in the gaps where you're not offering. So we do a lot of like this. It kind of works like that, and it feels very natural. I can't imagine not working together, wouldn't you say, Rob? Like, that's like the big thing.
Yeah, it really helps as well in kind of terms of output. The amount of times I've sat down on my own and written a piece of music and kind of thought, oh, this is dreadful, straight in, and then, next session we've been in together, played to Aaron, and he hears something, and then it becomes kind of a greater thing. Whereas, if I'd been working on my own, it would have just ended up in the trash,
Yeah.
Yeah, it's having that person that can help you sort of shape the ideas and then build the layers and whatever.
Yeah.
Who is the person when a line needs to be drawn? who is the person out of the two of you that's like, right, this is done now. We've got to stop tinkering.
If we're talking about that point, I'd say probably me, because Rob is the perfectionist, like, and
to
Rob,
my detriment at times.
but Rob mixes our records as well, and that's something we're looking to kind of spread the load on. But I've been very lucky to work with Rob, and I get to be like, okay, the creative production arrangement stuff done, and now leave it with Rob. So it's kind of, I feel like sometimes it's harder for Rob to distance himself from it, because he'll be there spending that week just buried in a mix, and I'll be like, it's great, you killed it, let's move on. But I think in the creative process, we've learned to be very good at like, oh, maybe we shouldn't spend 3 hours trying to, you know, find this one synth part if it's already doing the right thing. And I think you kind of have to learn that process of being like, I was listening to something, I can't remember what it was, about how you know, there are so many ways you can present a different idea, but to present a better idea is like really rare. And you know, if you're presenting loads of different ideas all the time, it's very rare that you'll progress, you know. So we do a lot of, okay, well, we spent an hour on this, where is it at? And I think we're good at that, Rob. I mean, you might be like, you're no good at that.
It's interesting, because I think the creative process, you have to kind of find a balance between kind of spontaneity and kind of whatever the opposite of spontaneity is, you know, perfection, I guess. Kind of working too much of one thing can ruin something. You know, you've got to have a certain amount of spontaneity and a certain amount of stuff that's kind of been worked at and perfected, I think, which is a hard balance to find.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah,
for sure.
And especially when the possibilities with electronic music are just endless, you know. And what you guys do so well is bringing these elements together. It doesn't feel overcomplicated, but it feels very rich in sound.
Thank you. I mean, thank you. That's like a big part of what we're going for. So that's great that you hear that.
Yeah, which is hard. I think it comes across very effortless, but actually there's a lot that goes into that. And I know, because I've started to play around with making electronic music, and it's
Oh, cool.
Keeping
awesome.
Things, I mean, very early days. But yeah, keeping that simplicity, but also with it feeling enriched. It's tough.
Yeah, I mean,
Sure.
I think you look at all the artists that you probably love as well, you know, Bonobo, Forte, George Fitzgerald. People probably think going in that, you know, the reason why it's so good is because they're so complicated, these songs they're making, and they're so rich, and they are rich, and they have so much depth. But and acts like Forte especially do this so well that they can really consolidate one or two key ideas in a track and make them the best version of themselves. And that there's your track. There's your, as opposed to just adding loads and loads all the time. And it is hard. Restraint is really hard in electronic music, because it's so easy to just keep adding.
Yeah,
it's so easy to do that, isn't it, Rob?
Yeah.
And we've been guilty of that before, but you know, you learn as you make, and it's a fun process. It's enjoyable for sure.
So we recently got your new single, Second Story Sunlight, which I played on last month's show. Sounded really, really great. And you said you sent me a little voice note saying it was kind of as you were dreaming of it was in the winter months, but you were thinking of kind of positive things and, you know, coming out of the lockdowns that we've had because of the pandemic. How do you feel people have connected with that track now it's out there in the world?
Yeah, I mean, the response has been so lovely, number one, and we're, you know, always grateful when people interact like yourself, and, you know, people popping up saying how they're connecting with it, and that's great. I think it was just the right time to release that piece of music, because I think it probably represented a lot of what people are feeling, you know. So, you know, the sun's coming out, people are feeling more optimistic. I think if a producer, an artist can release music that kind of represents a bit of what's out there in the world, it's always gonna connect, you know. So I think we felt that, and we've had comments like that, haven't we, Rob? People interacting with that track in that way.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, it's interesting kind of thinking back on kind of when, like, the gestation of the track, how it kind of came at such a kind of bleak time for everyone. It's we were definitely kind of searching for some kind of optimism in the work that we were doing around that time.
Mm.
Um,
Yeah, and it was right. It was the lockdown over Christmas, I think.
The
So
really
we'd
bleak
had a
one.
bit of a lift. Yeah, it was, and that was such a rough time, wasn't it? I mean, everyone was just. We'd had this year of just all this horrible stuff happening, and then it was like, and it keeps on coming, and then people couldn't see their families, and I mean, obviously, I don't want to attribute those kind of things to this track, but everyone was going through something of some kind at that time.
Yeah.
So
it felt very relentless at that point, because it was sort of, we'd had the autumn, which sort of felt like we were pretty much in lockdown, and then it was like Christmas was coming and everyone was like, Christmas is cancelled, and then after that it just turned into this epic kind of like just 4 or 5 months really of of being cut off from it for even more time. So it is that kind of bolt of light that you need in your life, and that's what it gives. And it was inspired, the title Second Story Sunlight was inspired by an Edward Hopper painting. Who saw the painting? Where did you spot that?
I think it was me. I don't actually remember how we came across it. We were quite spontaneous with like naming tracks and that kind of thing. It's usually just how things feel in a moment. And Rob had this the very first idea for the track Second Story Sunlight. Rob came up with, sent it over to me because we were working completely remotely at that time. So I think we spent 10 days in the studio together for the whole of last year, for the whole of 2020. And the rest of it was just remote. So we'd be bouncing ideas back and forth. And I think I was looking at some article or something. Obviously, I wasn't seeing art in person because no one was. And it just really struck a chord. And Edward Hopper, especially some of his later work is really stunning, and it just really connected. And there's like a stillness to that painting, but also a real brightness, luminescence, and it just made sense. And sometimes it's quite hard to, looking back, it's like it was like, how did that come about? And you don't really know where your head was exactly at when it. But I messaged Rob pretty much instantly. I was like, I think this is the track. And then from there, that was a nice catalyst for finishing the track. And some tracks do not have that kind of nice story to them. Some of them are literally like, we love this piece of music. It's kind of just existed. Let's put it out. And that's fine too. But it was nice to have a story. I think we liked having a story on this one.
Yeah, it's quite rare that you kind of have a fortuitous event where you stumble upon something that in some way kind of resonates with you and has a connection with kind of the piece of music that you're trying to name. That doesn't always happen, so that's nice.
Yeah, it's a lovely painting. I had a look at it before I got on the call. Sort of a cliffside house, and maybe like a mum and a daughter perhaps, and one's reading and one's looking out to sea, and it did make me think of the beach and how much I want to go on holiday. The other week I woke up and I just was like, I have to see the sea. I just need to see the sea. And I just drove down to Brighton to see my friend because I just needed to see the sea.
Yeah.
And it was
That's
lovely.
Were you born near the sea or anything? Did you grow up near the sea or?
No, I didn't. But I've just been in London, and I love London. But for me, being in London is always great when you can go away and travel and go to other places and visit the coast and stuff. And so this year's been hard for that because I've been in London the whole year, so I just occasionally get cabin fever and I'm like, I need to see the big blue. That's what happened.
No, I feel that massively. I mean, we're quite lucky because we are based kind of just on the edge of London with a bit of countryside as well, and that's been a bit of a relief, a bit of respite. And I haven't envied people who have been stuck in London. I mean, we love London and we will be heading there in some form soon, but it's been nice. It's come at a good time to not be in London. I feel, well, not completely in London, because we do have the luxury of a bit of green and a bit of fresh air, and it's been very restorative.
Yeah,
for sure.
definitely. Well, let's play Second Story Sunlight, and I'll chat more with Aaron and Rob from Jacana People after this. That was Second Story Sunlight. You're locked into Soho Radio Music Discovery with me, Georgie Rogers, and my guests this time are Jacana People. I've got Rob and Aaron on the show, and Jacana People. Where did that come from?
we were talking about this the other day. Again, it was a very spontaneous kind of moment. Just wanted to. Rob, you said it well the other day. We wanted to give the sense of a collective energy, because the emphasis in Jacana People is never about me and Rob. It's about the music and hopefully connecting with people and being in spaces together. And then Jacana was just Jacana is a little bird that we like the look of and the name of, and it ticked that box for us in terms of a organic, natural sounding thing that no one really knew what it was. It could be anything, and that was important to us as well. So I don't know if that's a good story or not, but that's how it.
Naming's. It's funny how kind of two kind of unrelated words can kind of be ascribed some meaning when you kind of start to use them. It's weird, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. Yeah. But now I can't imagine being called anything else. It's like, of course, we're Jacana. Like, it's when actually it's just nothing until you make it something. So I think, that's kind of what Rob's saying.
Totally, and it's always really hard to come up with a name for a project. It's almost the hardest part, finding something that's Googleable, that's also just that feels right, and that, it's just tough. It's hard to find a good name.
No, and some people do it. Some people nail it, and some people don't. But often the people that don't, still have amazing careers, and people, those names become great because of who's making the music.
Well, exactly. I always think of Oasis as an example of that. I mean, you think actually Oasis, terrible name. But you don't even really think, doesn't really...
Yeah.
U2
as well is a dreadful.
U2, terrible. You and the two, terrible. So we talked a bit about the fact that you said that you only really have been in the studio for 10 days last year, I think you said. The pandemic's obviously had such a huge impact on that kind of thing. So normally would you have expected to have done a lot more studio time, and when as we're coming out of this, will you kind of try and get in a studio together, or really have you just found a process that works for you?
Well, it's interesting because we're kind of going through a period now of readapting our process. We kind of became so used to working remotely, but you definitely lose something. You lose a certain kind of spontaneity that you can't recreate when you're not in the room, and you get much more in your own head, I think, when you're working on your own, as opposed to kind of you're bouncing off each other's energy kind of in a room. I definitely think it's much better to be together in the room for us.
And it because we've done that in different forms loads. That's our default. So it was more about adapting for last year, and we've done a lot more studio time in 2021. Actually, I think we got to the point when vaccines were being had and all of that, and we were just like, let's just enough is enough. And I think probably people have reached that threshold in a lot of their professional lives, and I'm sure you have as well, Georgie. Just found breaking points for certain moments, and you just have to say, taking things into account, and I think we're seeing the benefits of it. At the same time, as I think I mentioned earlier, just having the year and being able to work through it and come out with something really positive, because the project started, as the pandemic hit, completely unplanned. It was a bit before, I think we dropped a track, and then we had a month, and then it was into the pandemic. So to have this kind of focus and this thing to just carry us through it has probably been a huge thing for us, professionally or whatever, but also personally, as people just oh God, I can make some music now. Or I feel like the timing was pretty lucky for us actually in a lot of ways, because maybe had the pandemic been earlier, we might have put things on ice, or I don't know, Rob. We haven't really talked about that, but I can see that having happened.
Yeah, we're very lucky to have kind of some clear direction and something to focus on during that time, whereas a lot of people maybe didn't.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah. And also, it's been really exciting actually, because there's been a lot of ears on your music, and people have been playing it. You've picked up quite a lot of radio play. So whilst it's been an unconventional time for releasing music, I suppose it's actually, it's come at a time where people really have needed music, I think, in the last year to sort of provide solace and just take you out of daily vibes. So yeah, it's actually been kind of exciting, really, because I suppose you've been able to sort of see it gain traction.
Yeah,
Yeah,
completely. That's been so weird actually, just because you're just sitting back and you're putting stuff out into this weird digital world, and if you're talking to people, it's through a screen or whatever it is, and that I mean, it's been really humbling, to be honest, that people have engaged, and because people, that no one owes you anything, and especially in a time when people just need to focus on themselves and their families, it's anyone who's just given a bit of love to us or whatever, it feels really, really cool. And we'll always have that, even though it's been horrible. I think everyone will probably feel like once we're through it, big sense of like collective, we did it, and me and Rob will have that in a small way. But as I'm sure you're buzzing about things opening up as well, Georgie. Like I'm sure you booked in loads of gigs. And have you got gigs coming up? What's your first thing you're going to see?
Festivals, probably. Nice. I can't wait. If We Out Here happens, which is Giles Peterson and Worldwide's festival, if that happens, and then End of the Road as well. And then some other gigs definitely, but I haven't really. I've sort of been a bit slow about booking in gigs. I don't know why, because I guess I've still been a little bit skeptical, and I didn't want to get disappointed again.
Yeah, it's tough, isn't it? The balance. Yeah, no, but I think skepticism is healthy, right? But
definitely towards the end of the year and autumn, and I'm gonna go out dancing, and I'm gonna go hopefully to festivals if they happen. But that is, I mean, it's so exciting. But yeah, that side of your music just hasn't been there. But it's given you time, I imagine, to think about it. Like, have you been thinking? Have the cogs been turning about? All right, what would our live show be? What are the possibilities we could explore? Lighting and visuals and all that.
Massively. So we just done a recorded performance for Big Weekend, with BBC Introducing, and that was like a really great catalyst to be like, what does it look like? And we didn't actually have to worry about what does it look like, because it was an audio performance, it was a recording of that. But yeah, it really makes you excited, and we're booking in some DJ sets, and that's like a nice thing to be able to do. But I think we're just going to try and be really ambitious with it. Not, there's no rush, because there's a backlog of 2 years of gigs. So when it comes, we want it to really connect and really pack a punch, I think. So, but it is so exciting. I mean, me and Rob have kind of been going over it, because when we were back playing in indie bands, all we thought about doing was playing at a festival or doing whatever. So, we're not there yet, but next year, it's exciting.
Yeah, it's so exciting. We kind of had to shut off that part of our brains for kind of a year, just because there was nothing on the cards at all. So it's really nice to look forward to that. Yeah.
Did either of you ever go to the Fortet tour where he played with it was an installation? I think Squid Soup did it, and they just had thousands of lights. Did either of you go to that?
Yeah, that was phenomenal.
You went, Aaron, didn't you? Yeah.
Yeah, I saw that Ali Pali, and that was pretty mind blowing. Just a stunning way to connect electronic sound to like a visual medium that people can appreciate, whether or not they loved electronic music. That's why it's so good. That's when you really kill it in this world, I think. Making electronic music just music for people who aren't fans of the genre, and I'm sure a show like that just would have blown anyone away. And that's obviously the long-term goal.
Yes.
To do something like that.
I did wonder. I just wondered if either of you had been to that, because I went along to the Ali Pali one, and it just blew my mind. But yeah, like you say, it's just that the possibilities of what you can do. It's really exciting, I think. And then, like I think of like floating points at Printworks. They had the whole of Printworks was basically they'd flipped, because it's a really long, thin venue, and they'd kind of flipped it horizontally and then projected loads and loads of artwork on like the whole of the sort of long wall, and then floating points was kind of in there. I think of John Hopkins, his visual shows are amazing. So it is, there's a lot, I think, now to reference or to think about.
Yeah.
Wow, it could be really that big, a few years down the line. It's exciting.
Yeah, massively.
Yeah. So we're going to play Farah is the next track. So this was pre Second Story Sunlight. And speaking of the slightly ravier moment, like this has got a bit more of that kind of pumping ravey bass line to it.
Yeah.
Tell me a bit about how Farah came together.
How did Farah come together? So Farah was a track that we started writing right in the middle of the pandemic. So it was a big turning point in our writing, I think, just in terms of exploring some more energetic sound and, just trying to be a bit more experimental with how we approached it, with some vocal sample stuff. And we were listening to a lot of field recordings of like Flowing Water and that we sampled that a lot in the track, and that it just was all about momentum and energy. God, it's strange thinking back to that track. It's so funny. That came out a little while ago, but it feels way in the back of my head. I don't know about you, Rob.
Yeah, we were listening to a lot of Japanese electronic music, I think, at the time, which has kind of a really kind of specific and amazing kind of quality and mood to it. I guess escapism would be the word that kind of springs to mind when thinking about that track, which is obviously quite quite pertinent given what everyone was going through at the time. And I think that's kind of what we were looking to channel with Farah, just kind of some kind of transcendence.
It's a gorgeous track, and I think we should hear it. So this is Farah, and this is Jacana People on Soho Radio. That was the sound of Farah. You're listening to Soho Radio. I've got Jacana People, I've got Rob and Aaron on the show this week. And what is next? We've had this Second Story Sunlight was the latest single, and there's a few tracks up on your Spotify. If people are coming to you new now, there's lots to listen to. There's lots of great stuff and a few remixes and things. But what is in the pipeline? Is there an EP? Is there an album?
Yeah, we're putting together something kind of longer form towards the end of the year, which is really exciting. I don't know whether we can talk too specifically about it yet, because we're still putting it together. But yeah, I mean, there's loads of music to come, some of our best stuff yet, we think, and it'll be nice to explore something that's a bit more in depth, obviously with a longer form EP or whatever we're going to call it. We'll be able to put together a bit more of a body of work, and so that's really exciting. And we've got some really exciting collaboration stuff as well, which we can't really talk about, but yeah, that's we've been putting a lot of time into that as well, Rob, haven't we? And we've been loving that. So
yeah, for sure. Yeah, it's just really nice to kind of just keep kind of evolving as producers and writers, and kind of think of things in a larger sense as well. We've been kind of very single focused up to now, which kind of is quite liberating in a sense, because it's kind of, you say your piece in 3 to 5 minutes or whatever, but it's kind of, you can expand things when you start thinking about kind of longer bodies of work.
So far, I mean, you do use samples, and there's some choral textures, for example, in Second Story Sunlight, and there's a few kind of vocal samples. But you say collaborations, obviously can't go into who, but is that something that you're kind of it is a full vocal track what you'd like to sort of explore more?
We're kind of open to anything if it's the right thing. We're wary of doing like a full vocal thing, because it does place us in a world that we're not directly in at the moment. But if the right collaborator's there, we're super open to it. A lot of what we do at the moment is sample based, and even working with these people that we're collaborating with at the moment, that even in itself is quite sample heavy, and how we work with vocals. I mean, we're also working with non-vocalists and instrumentalists as well. So we're trying to just be as broad as we can at the moment, and take as much inspiration from amazing musicians around us. I think that's the key, really. And we've found a lot of joy in that. I think wouldn't you say, Rob? Yeah.
Yeah, I think kind of all the vocal stuff we've used up to now has been kind of quite repetitive, which is kind of something that's quite hard to achieve when you're kind of working in like a top line scenario. But yeah, definitely it kind of opens up a whole new kind of plane of possibilities working with a vocalist. So yeah, definitely something I'm sure we'll explore down the line.
Yeah. Well, isn't it exciting? It feels really, really exciting. It seems like you guys have been busy working on a lot of stuff, and I'm really looking forward to seeing how the next year pans out for you.
Yeah, we're buzzing to share. We'll send over some new stuff when we have it, Georgie. It'll be not too long till the next bit. So
till the next something.
The next something.
It'll be something. It'll be something. Well, I can't wait to hear it. And thank you so much for being on the show, and thanks for your time, guys.
Yeah, thank you so much for having us, Georgie. It was really, really lovely to do this.
Yeah. Lovely to chat to you.